Welcome, ladies. Welcome on tonight's webinar. It's called Ignite Mr. Right. It's in the stars. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a dating coach. I help single women on how to attract a suitable partner so they can have the relationship and love lives they truly deserve and desire. Now, I'm really excited to have a very special guest on the webinar tonight. She is an entrepreneur, an astrologer. We've actually just met a couple of weeks ago and really clicked straight away. Now, before I actually go any further, I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me okay. So if anyone can type in that you can hear me okay and that you can actually see the screen. Yeah, that's all good. Thanks, Melanie. Perfect. So, yeah, very excited to do this interview tonight. It's astrology's been very much part of my journey for a long time. I'll go into it a little bit more, but of course, first of all, I'd like to introduce the fabulous Elizabeth Ball. She's the founder of It's in the Stars. So, thanks so much to be on the call tonight, Elizabeth.
That's a pleasure, Camille. Thank you very much for having me.
Wonderful. So it's interesting because we met and we talked about how we first got into astrology, and I actually got into it when I was about 16, and it was very much part of my my beginning of my personal journey of personal development. But you actually started even younger. So yeah, are you happy to share a little bit, about yourself and how you actually got into astrology?
Yes, absolutely. It was my grandmother who introduced me to astrology. I was about 12 years old, and my mother had sent me over to my grandmother for the day. And I think I was doing the old traditional, I'm bored, what can I do? So my grandmother had asked me, do you know what sun sign you are? And I said, no, I have no idea. And she said, well, you're a Gemini. Can you, have a look at this book and, read it and tell me what you think? Anyway, it was an old 1940s leather-bound astrology book. And I didn't know it until then, but my grandmother was, very interested in astrology. And I was absolutely riveted. So I devoured, the section about me, and then I asked her what she was, and she was a Leo. And I asked what mum was, and she was a Cancer, and then dad, and he was an Aquarius. And I would basically ask about everyone in my family until I had basically, over the summer, read the entire 12 signs. And I was, quite excited by it all. So this was summertime. So she gave me a late Christmas present of some money so I could buy my first astrology book. And then every time I got pocket money, and then once I started doing Saturday morning jobs when I was at school, I would start spending my money on astrology books to learn more about it. And then my friends started nicknaming me Crystal Ball at school and would
Wow.
ask me, am I suited to this guy? So, excuse me, that's how I became extremely interested in it from the age of 12.
That's amazing. And so you a lot of people, yeah, a lot of your friends would have asked you for love advice from an early age. That's fascinating.
I think everyone wants to know who they're compatible with, whether they're 16, 36, or 65. I think love is always, the top question everyone wants to ask. It's always love or money. Generally, love is the favorite thing to ask about. And if you're single, you want to find out, why you're single and how you can, meet him. And if you've met him, it's are you actually really suited? And then if you're engaged or married, it's how can we get some of the old magic back? So it's endlessly
Never ending.
fascinating because oh, absolutely, I can look at a chart and see what tendencies people might have, and a lot of people I think um, uh, might do things unconsciously. They don't realize they might make certain choices or be attracted to certain men or even act in a certain way. And then when they realize that, they might sort of see, excuse me, they might see that there are certain patterns that are better or worse for them to follow. And there are also better aspected times to actually go after love, and then better times to concentrate perhaps on your career. And that's also a possibility for you to meet somebody there. I think men in general find women very enchanting when they're actually quite dedicated to something. So yes, I find it endlessly interesting, and of course it also if you start to understand yourself a bit better, you can also have better relationships with people, and not just boyfriends and husbands, but also your friends and your family and your colleagues, because you understand where they're coming from when they feel or act a certain way.
Absolutely, and even with family, as you mentioned, I only sort of looked at my parents' charts not long ago, and I'm like, oh my god, I can really see them. It really helps you understand them, and see them in a totally different light. So
It, yeah, it really does. I think it even helps you, forgive people who have hurt you. You can understand and see what they might be, going through. And I think, you know, there's there's a lot of room to move in anybody's chart. But if they just have a bit of an awareness, they can sort of act in a way that just benefits them a bit better, I think.
absolutely. And we'll go more into, maybe compatibility in what to look for a little bit later on. But I'm also curious, what really motivated you to have your own business, like with astrology being an interest in from an early age. What then motivated you now to actually have your own business and work for yourself?
Well, and I'm going to say it took me a very long time. It took me several decades to get around to making it a business. For some reason, I don't know why I thought this, but I thought that you should have a hobby that was separate from what you did for work. And I would have friends all the time asking me, or telling me actually, you should do this for a living. You should be an astrologer for a living. And I would say, no, no, you need to have a separate hobby. And I do actually have other hobbies, but I happen to adore astrology. And how it happened that I turned it into a business was it started slowly, but I used to write astrology columns and horoscope columns and astrology articles. So I worked in the media industry, and um, when my friends started getting married in their mid to late 20s, I was a journalist, and I think most people know that journalists are not very well paid at all. Excuse me. So I used to find it hard to, work out what I could get them because I couldn't afford very much that was on their um, gift registry, and I felt
Right.
embarrassed about buying just tea towels. So I thought I will do what I'm very good at, and that is actually to create an astrology report all about my friend and her fiance or husband to be. And I used to be afraid that when I'd give it to them, they'd think I was a cheapskate and I should have bought them something off their registry. But they're actually thrilled. And I think, it's the old thing of psychology. Everybody's favorite topic is themselves. And they would always, think this is amazing, and you just know this from our birth date and birth time. I went, yep. And so, I used to do these, 30-page reports. And as I said, I thought quite firmly that I should just make it a hobby. And although people were saying, oh, can you do one for me? When they got married or engaged. And then eventually, all these people started having kids, of course, and I was very very late to get engaged, as we'll talk about later. And so I was thinking about baby gifts, and by that time, which was a few years later, I actually could afford to buy them something, but they were saying, no, 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 can you do one of your baby reports for us? And so I thought, excuse me, it's got a terrible cold. Yes, of course. And so I would, create these reports all about their child. And again, they'd be amazed because it would also reveal about the parent's personality coming down into the child's chart, and show their personality and potential. So I was doing that, and then I had about 10 years ago joined the gift experiences website redballoon.com.au as their marketing manager. And within a week of being there, when I started, that it was still a very small company. They had about 400 experiences, and then they now have, I think, about 2,700 experiences. And
Wow.
I noticed very quickly. In fact, I think I may have even typed it in out of curiosity. I typed in astrology on their search button to see what they had, and I was quite amazed to see they had an astrology um, offering. So I decided to buy it, and I received a natal report. And the natal report is all about you as a person. And so I noted that it was, well, probably, I guess it was what I expected it would be, but it was, in a plastic folder with a plastic spine and in plastic sleeves, and it had little illustrations of dolphins and not unicorns, but rainbows and things through it. And I was thinking, oh, it's very, very hippie-ish. And I was thinking, it's not what I would do if I did this. And so I put it, to one side, of my mind, and thought about it later. And then I left Red Balloon after 2 years, and I was feeling, which a lot of people do actually, in their mid 30s. I was feeling a bit stale, and I was thinking, what am I going to do now? And so I decided to do an MBA class, and I'm not academic at all. And in fact, I must admit that I was actually the worst of my class at the essays. And these were people who didn't speak English. But my lecturer had said, "Oh, what did you used to do? Because your essays are very entertaining, but they're not very academic." Anyway, I scraped through this MBA. But the very first day I was there, um, the uh, the lecturer, which I think it was in human resources unit, said, now, everybody say why they decided to do an MBA, and you first, because having Ball as my surname nearly always made me first, alphabetically. And I found these words coming out of my mouth. I'm going to do an astrology website, and I didn't even know where the words came from. I didn't know I was going to say it. It just came out of seemingly nowhere, and everyone looked at me like I was the freak in the class. And I thought, so my fate is sealed. That's what I'll do then. And I decided, yeah, I will do that. And so I did all my assignments as much as possible on working out my um, website as a business. And I was lucky enough that Red Balloon agreed to let me trial it with the Love Stars and Baby Stars reports on their website, which is still there to this day. And then I decided I'm actually going to make this a full time job. So um, I launched it at the end of 2006. So that's how I launched the business.
And such a beautiful story. And how does it feel now really doing what you're passionate about and making, making a great living from it as well? How does it feel?
Well, I find it's endlessly fascinating to me to speak with other people about themselves and their lives. And my partner and I, we argue very rarely, but one thing we do have a little thing about is that I can quite easily, happily work till very late at night, doing people's charts and speaking with them about booking consultations with me. And he sort of says, you really need to switch off. So um, I really enjoyed it. It is quite a joy, and in fact, I think that some of your listeners might discover that their ideal job actually can be revealed in their horoscope chart. I think a lot of people, and I may have done it a little bit myself, can get pushed into a certain career because their parents did it, or in my case, my best friends was doing it, and so I decided I would do the same course as she was doing. And while it suited me, there are many people who end up doing roles that really don't inspire them very much. So I think, if you get the freedom and the flexibility to reboot your life and say, look, I'd actually like to explore XYZ, it's just much more fun. And to be honest, you can actually, how would I put this nicely? You can tolerate a lower salary than you would have got if you were working, for a major company. If you work for yourself, if you really love what you do.
Absolutely, and it even for, I guess, anyone when they're happy, then and looking for someone too, it really shows when someone is in their passion and doing what you love doing. It's such a powerful thing.
Yeah, no, it is. It just makes life all click into place, definitely.
That's right. So you have got a very unique and inspiring story with how you've met your soon to be husband. Are you happy to share a little bit about about your story to the audience?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The story goes back a couple of years. My mother and I had been taking turns caring for my grandfather, and I had been single, actually, I must admit, for quite some years, and in fact, 7 years before I met Andrew. And I had gone on dates, and nothing was working, and it wouldn't seem to get past the third date, and he'd disappear or say he changed his mind, and it was all quite upsetting. And so then when I was caring for my 96-year-old grandfather, I was, excuse me, extremely busy looking after him, and it just didn't leave room for a romantic life. And so when he passed away, my mother sort of said, "Look, we've had no life, really for a couple of years now. Why don't we go on holidays?" And there was a tour that she wanted me to do, which was to go around France. And to be honest, I was a little bit apprehensive about going on a 3 week bus tour with people in their 70s, and me being the youngest one there. So I wasn't exactly jumping at the chance. And she said, look, they go in May and in September. Anyway, she left me to think about it. And then at about late November 2010, you might remember that Prince William finally got engaged to Kate Middleton after they'd been dating for all that time. And they were getting married then on the 29th of April 2011. So I had said to her, look, I'd love to be in England, not in London, which might be hard to get around and booked out, but I'd love to be at least in England when the wedding's on, because the royal family always knows how to put on a wedding. It'll be fun. And I wanted to go to Cornwall, which I'd read about when I was at school. We did Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and I thought Cornwall sounded very romantic and full of pirate smugglers and all sorts of things. And I thought I definitely wanted to see that. So I said, look, let's go a bit earlier. And I said, I'll look at a good date for us to depart on this holiday. And Mum has known that I obviously do astrology, and has known about it for decades. And in fact, I've helped her, choose the right days to go looking for houses when she was like buying a new house or buying a new car and things like that. Anyway, that's another story. But so she's quite, flexible about those arrangements. And so I looked at the ephemeris, and the ephemeris is, the best way I can describe it is, it's like a railway timetable of the planets. So instead of having the 6:15 from Flinders arriving at Sandringham, for example, it would be the Sun train arrives in the Libra platform, and so on for the 10
Wow.
planets. And so when you get familiar with astrology, eventually you can read across like a date in time, say the 10th of August or something,
That's my
and you can see
birthday. Oh, how
immediately.
funny.
Oh, no way! Is it really?
Yeah, it is.
Um,
We're in tune.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Uh,
Um, so I could look across immediately, and I can see not only what signs your planets are in, but also the degrees of them, and the degrees of them make the aspects between them, which create positive or challenging aspects for someone to deal with in their life. And I can look at that and work it out in a second, really. So I looked at this particular, you know, end of April time, and I looked at the 24th of April, and I was thinking I just have to leave then because I had all these amazing aspects which indicated I'd meet somebody unexpectedly who would change my life, you know, in a flash. And I thought we are so leaving on the 24th of April at 2:30 in the afternoon. So luckily for me, there was a Virgin flight overseas leaving that day from Sydney, and Mum and I, you know, got on the plane, and we'd hardly walked down the aisle, and she'd started putting things in the overhead locker. And I noticed a man was sitting in the row right in front of her seat. And he looked up, and I looked at him, and we both smiled at each other. And I thought, I know you, although I'd never met him ever. And um, anyway, it was just quite an instant kind of karmic soul recognition. And we got to talking later and swapped emails, and while we're overseas on our trip, and we're emailing each other, and so a few weeks later I went down to Melbourne, which coincided with my birthday, to catch up with him for a driving date. It was a 12-hour driving date, as it turned out, and we talked about absolutely everything in the sun. And um, so that was June, and I moved down. Oh, and then we met up with each other about 4 more weekends in Sydney, in the Gold Coast, down in Melbourne again. And by the end of August, I'd moved in with him. And of course, all my friends thought I'd completely lost my mind, but they'd met him once, and my mother finally got to meet him because she was busy. She finally actually got to meet him in November, and she adores him. And that was actually another thing. I could also look at my parents' charts to check how they would get on with Andrew. And I thought, oh, wow. In fact, they get on with him better than me. so,
Wow.
so it was really nice. And I thought, oh, thank goodness. And so my brother and sister like him, and my friends like him. And it just makes life so easy. So it was just meant to be. But, I just chose that date because it really, had all the right aspects in place, and I just didn't expect to meet him within 3 minutes on the plane. So
That's such an incredible story. And I'm curious, like a few months before that happened, or like a year before, did you sort of have moments where you had given up on maybe meeting someone special? Or did you always know that you would eventually meet someone that was right for you?
to be honest, I was starting to worry I would end up my mother's spinster companion unless I met someone quickly. But because my mum was getting quite used to me hanging out with her all the time, so that was a bit freaky. But no, look, I always felt that eventually I would meet someone. I just didn't think I would be the age I was. So I met him at the ripe old age of 43. So I seriously thought, like so many girls do in all the movies, I'd be married off by 30, and that didn't happen. But interestingly for me, I also didn't fret and worry about it when it didn't happen. And sometimes I wonder whether there are some people who have chosen somebody who's okay, but not doesn't really, rock their world because they just don't want to be alone, or worse, they just, want to be married by a certain age, arbitrary age. So,
Yes.
for me, it was always much more important that I met the right person. My family, actually, I have a long line of divorces in my family, and I was absolutely determined it would not happen to me. So there was a lot of bad choices going on one side of the coin, but on another, a number of family members also did, the classic thing when everybody goes through astrological aspects that are affecting their chart and can make life seem like it's quite nightmarish, and you think, oh, it will never end. And if you're unaware of what the aspects are, or even how long they're going to um, occur for, you might actually end up taking some making some decisions that you'll later regret. So that could be anything from, jumping in with 2 feet and marrying somebody you don't know, to ending a perfectly good relationship just because you're feeling a bit bored and disenchanted with your own life or yourself, but you actually are projecting it and thinking it's your partner's fault. So I think if people had a little bit more awareness about astrology and the aspects that are affecting them at any point in time, they might, make better choices. I just think divorce is horrible, and just the thought of people all splitting up and the kids being unhappy. It's just a nightmare. So that's one thing I'm very keen to help people avoid. Avoid making the wrong choice. But if you're with somebody and you're going through a tough time, sort of like have the astrological insights to know if it's just a phase, or if you really really are you know going through a terrible time with your partner that won't really easily recover.
That's such a good point that you're making, because a lot of my clients, are in their mid 30s, late 30s, early 40s as well, and it's so good to hear from someone like you that when the right time came, now you are with with your Mr. Right, and in a way, waiting a little bit later also, it means that you really know who you are as a person. Like when people get married too young, they might have not really even developed themselves enough. So there are definitely advantages to getting married a little bit later.
Oh,
I think.
definitely, definitely.
And and also, so you mentioned you would actually, let's say, someone is wants to check if someone is the right sort of person. You could really
Yeah.
also check. Yeah, what sort of things would you actually check as far as I was going to ask you a bit later, but we may as well cover it now. Like as far as compatibility goes, like is there
Yeah.
such a thing as having, a really compatible partner astrologically, or is it really about just making the most of whoever you're going to be with? Like, what's your view in
Yeah,
regards
look,
to that?
that's a really interesting point. It's a bit of both, but I'll mention the second one in a moment. The first one is about discovering if you're compatible, and I can tell that with a Love Stars report, which um, you can find out within just 5 minutes. Ordering a Love Stars email report. You don't even have to have the birth time, just their birth date and year. And ideally, if you happen to know where they were born, that would be good too. But you could have a guess. It doesn't matter too much. But in the Love Stars report, what I look at, um, particularly for compatibility, is having a look at the first half dozen, first 6 to 8 um, aspects that occur between the couple. Excuse me. They indicate the level of compatibility that the couple holds. And the first things that you notice about a person will be qualities of those um, aspects. So if you're meeting somebody, and let's just say, like, it's a chemical reaction, you go, wow, oh my god, they are just really really sexy. You might have like some Venus and Mars aspects going on, which is nice, obviously, but you need to have like a range of other things happening in your chart. So the first half dozen aspects are the ones that will like show you what you immediately notice about your partner, and experience with them, like even on the first date, um, and also what you experience on an ongoing basis. And then the weakest ones, which is the last half dozen or so, are the ones that don't come up until you've been dating for quite a while. And they're what I call like the surprise delights or the minor annoyances. So you might not know that your partner had a certain attitude about something, or you might be, thrilled to discover that, occasionally they will do, X, Y, Z. But the first few that they have, um, where the compatibility comes in is you want those first few to be positive ones. So if I see aspects between couples that are like, say, Mars and Pluto, for example, like a square, that could indicate that they could have quite violent arguments. And that's the last thing I want for, a couple, um, who are just meeting, for the first time and sort of like seeing if they will, persist with their relationship. So you can tell whether people are, basically compatible, but there are certain qualities that will come up immediately that you'll see, or that I will see, but you'll also see it by reading it. And the point you made about, is anybody compatible with anybody? Well, yes, I suppose if you're stuck on a desert island, you might be, but there are definitely people, like if you think about your your working career, there are definitely colleagues that you gravitate to immediately, and you love hanging out with, and the others you're quite civil with, and you can even have like a pleasant conversation with them, but they just don't float your boat. Well, it's the same with romantic relationships as well. So yes, you can grow to know somebody over time if it's not like the traditional type. And I'm presuming that people who are in arranged marriages, for example, might have that. So yes, you can grow to become compatible with somebody who you wouldn't have immediately chosen, but you can definitely tell straight away what qualities certain relationships have just at first glance.
Right, and I
Yes.
guess this is such so good to hear for for the listeners. This is not really about, okay, he's a Virgo and I'm a Libra, for example. It's really about the aspects and all where all the other planets are in the chart.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Look, I've did a study of about 700 couples, last year, and was actually, quite surprised to find that the majority of people don't actually date their perfect sun sign. And in fact, actually, ironically, for an astrologer saying this, it's possibly the worst thing you can say to someone you don't know, saying what's your star sign. Well, for one thing, a lot of men don't really like astrology that
That's
much,
right.
or at best they don't understand it. But if you don't understand it either, and you say, I'm a, you're, what are you? And he'll say, well, what are you? And you'll say, it's like, then you've got nothing else to talk about, because you might not necessarily know what it actually means. But if you have preconceptions that that particular sign doesn't suit you, that could actually eliminate someone who's actually quite lovely for you. And you've got a lot of um, aspects in your charts together that actually do link you up really nicely. So you could have actually thrown away a potentially great relationship. But yeah, it's actually, it's not the sun sign you should be asking for. It's the birth date, and then you can actually find out a lot more about them. So
And then they
um,
need to go and see you and get check out all the details.
yeah. Oh well, the girls can just like ask the guy for his birth date, and then they can find out an awful lot. Or if you're naughty, check his driver's license birth date while he's in the bathroom or
That's a good
something.
idea. I like that.
That's a possibility. But yeah, you can tell quite a lot about somebody from their birth date, but the sun signs alone is not enough.
That's right. And so many people still don't know that's what astrology is really about. So it's always surprising how many people think it's just about the sun sign. So you, when we caught
Yeah.
up the other day, we had a bit of a chat around that at the beginning, the importance of taking it quite slowly at the beginning of a relationship, and that in the beginning we tend to see more of their ascendant in the ascendant in someone's
Yeah.
chart, and then it takes
Yeah.
actually a while and to see more of who they are. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that works?
Yes, definitely. Well, in your chart, the ascendant is the time that you're born. And the ascendant rules your what I call your party personality, which is so it's basically the way that you would cope if you went to a party and excuse me, your host welcomed you, said hi, gave you a kiss, and then disappeared, and you knew no one. It's how you would cope at that party.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily how you really are, but it's how people might experience you, for the first time. Um, so it's your personality, but it's also your looks and it's how you dress and so on and how you appear. But a good way to understand it is I'll use the analogy of a house. So if any of your listeners have ever been house hunting, whether they're looking for a new flat to live in, to rent, or looking for a house to buy, you'll drive past a lot of houses and you might think, oh, that one's entertainer's delight, or that one's needs fixing up, or that one looks beautiful, or whatever. Well, the ascendant is a little bit like that. It's the outer shell of yourself. It's not actually who you are. And you can tell where you are in a relationship if you think of the ascendant as the front door of your house. Um, People like, say, the pizza delivery boy rarely ever comes in further past your front door. So these are all very casual um, relationships with somebody, not even relationships, they're just encounters with people. And even acquaintances that you may have met. They might be friends with one of your friends, and so your friend will say to that friend, I'll get XYZ to pick you up at your house. And it's, again, unlikely they'll do more than just knock on the door or beep the horn and pick you up and go. So it's still quite a very superficial relationship. So when you meet somebody on a blind date, or speed dating or whatever, you're meeting effectively their ascendant. So it's how they look and how they present themselves, and it's very superficial level of outer level of their personality, and then it can take several weeks to start seeing their sun sign. And if I continue the house analogy, that would be their lounge room. Now, of course, you could actually invite anybody that you met that day or that night into your lounge room. But I'm talking about the the thing about people's lounge rooms. It's where they hang out at home and they're comfortable and they kick their shoes off and they watch their favorite show, and they kind of just relax a bit. If you think about a relationship on an emotional level, um, are you close enough that you can imagine just hanging out together, watching TV, just getting a takeaway, and just sort of, having a, fairly, um, low key, very relaxed, time with them. And so that's your moon, your sun sign. And then it takes people probably somewhere between about 6 weeks to 3 months, or it can be quicker actually if you're seeing them more often, to move to your moon sign. And your moon sign I equate to people's attic or their basement. And that's where you would keep stuff that's very private. It might be in reality, it might be things like your family heirlooms or antiques, or perhaps it's got photos of you when you were at school, and perhaps you had pimples or braces, or it's where you feel vulnerable, and it's not something that you would just show any old person. So the type of people who might in reality see your attic would be your brother and sister, your parents, obviously, your best friend, your own children when you have them, and your long-term partner. So um, when you've moved from your sun sign to your moon sign, there's nowhere left to go. So basically, you have to meet somebody and think, would I really want them knowing all of that about me straight away? And um, so if you get physically involved with somebody very, very quickly, um, you've artificially propelled yourself up to the attic, so to speak. Actually, you might think it's the bedroom, but emotionally, psychologically, it's the moon sign in the attic. and you've got nowhere to go. And so that's why it's very painful to get involved with somebody very quickly, because you haven't gradually moved through the stages of just being increasingly comfortable with them. So if you find that somebody, it isn't really quite working for you, it's a lot easier to end it when it's still at the front door or just in the lounge room. But once they've um, got entangled with you psychologically in your moon sign, you've really made yourself vulnerable. And I find that, and I don't know if I'm the only one who does this, but the older I get, the longer it takes me to get over a romantic relationship that didn't work out, that I had high hopes for, because I you know gave it everything, and I should have waited. So yeah.
Absolutely.
um,
And it's such an important point. Like I keep on talking about the, really taking it slow at the beginning. And I love how you described it from, from a different angle. It makes so much sense. So it's really important to just take things really slow. And as you said, like if then he's not the right match, then it's so much easier to go to separate ways if they haven't actually come into your house yet, so to speak. So
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And in fact, you can find it out surprisingly, quickly. I, went on a couple of dates with a guy who actually had responded to an ad when I was looking for a flatmate. And the flatmate side of things wasn't going to work out. But he said, "Oh, would you like coffee?" And so we had coffee, and that was nice. And then a few weeks later, he sort of said, "Oh, do you want to catch up for dinner? It's my birthday." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I was kind of wondering why he wasn't doing something with his friends on his birthday. But anyway, so we went for dinner, and then he didn't have a car. And I remember he sort of said, "Oh, would you drop me at Edgecliff Station," which was in Sydney. And I said, "Okay." And then when he got out of the car, I remember hearing him say, "Oh, and he didn't even drop me off on the right side of the road," just quite quietly, but I heard it. And I thought I must have imagined that, but what a creep. Anyway, so I didn't think anything more about it. And then another couple of weeks went past, and he rang me and said, "Oh, do you want to go to the movies?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." He said, "What do you want to see?" And this was 2006, I think. And he said, "Actually, I'd love to go see Superman Returns." And he said, "Oh, okay." And so we're watching the movie, and I was sitting next to him thinking, "I wonder if he's going to finally give me a kiss or something." And I didn't really know what the point of the relationship was. And he said, "Oh, just a sec, I've just got to go out." And I said, "Okay." And so I was sitting there and I'm thinking, I wonder what happened to him, whatever. And anyway, he had just left and left me sitting in the in the cinema. And then when I got out, there was a text message from him saying, "Oh, I just couldn't stand a minute more of that movie."
oh my
He sort of
goodness.
I know. So this was about midnight by now, and he just said, "Oh, when you get out, text me. We'll meet for coffee." And I thought, I don't think so. And so anyway, I didn't say anything. And about 4 days later, I got another text message from him, and he said something like, "When you finish sulking, why don't you give me a call?" And I thought, you're a nerd, like you're a creep. Anyway, so I was really glad that nothing had happened. But yuck. There are some awful men out there. So
Definitely. I mean, and there's some, just some really bizarre, yeah, exactly, some weird people out there. So you really want to find out a lot of those things before you start getting physical and too emotionally involved because it is a lot more
oh,
painful.
exactly,
Oh,
definitely.
that's quite a funny story. That's something new. Someone actually leaving the movie on a date. Oh my goodness.
Oh, I thought, look, he could have, fallen asleep or something. That's quite common. If he was really
Yes.
bored. But just to like walk out and leave me sitting there. I mean, like no one else would know probably. But I just felt like a big doofus, and I think, thank goodness I drove my own car there. So,
That's
well,
right.
actually, he didn't have a car, but yeah. So there are some jerks out there. So
Definitely.
it's
And then, there are so many really amazing guys. So it's really about um, staying positive and knowing that there are a lot of good men out there.
Yes, definitely. And having you know, I think having some healthy self-confidence in yourself that you actually have a lot to offer and you won't put up with any nonsense. So when I was doing that MBA class, a few guys were like saying, so what are you looking for in life or whatever? And I said, I'd really like to get married and have kids actually. And I was like, oh, you can't say that. And I sort of said, I can say it as often as I like. If they don't like it, they're not right for me. So, I really couldn't give a stuff what they think.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think you just have to be very, very firm about what you want, and men actually really do like you to be clear. And so I uh, had a couple of male flatmates who sort of like said, look, the key to actually winning us over is you just have to get in our mind. Like we need to be thinking about you, like what makes her laugh, and they want to be the last person they speak to at night on the phone, and that sort of thing. So I forgot what I was going to say.
All, all good, but yeah, exactly. I mean, they do. They are the first point you made. It's so important to be true to ourselves, and then men do respect it when we know what we want. But the way you said it, it was like, well, you didn't care if someone wasn't the right match, but you knew what you wanted, and then okay,
Yeah,
if they don't like that, that's too bad. There is going to be that right person out there.
yeah, definitely. So they definitely are out there. It's just a case of having the right frame of mind, and just be. It's a bit of a combination of be willing to take a risk, but also to take it slowly if you can do both. So.
Definitely, definitely. And when we caught up, another thing you mentioned, which I thought was really interesting that I hadn't heard before, you mentioned about the Venus in a woman's chart is sort of symbolizes how she can attract a partner. Did I get that right? Can you explain a little
Yes,
bit
you
more
did.
about that?
Yes, you did. You got that perfectly right. Yeah. The uh, the ascendant is how you look, and how you present yourself. But Venus in a woman's chart is her sex appeal, and so that actually has like an underlying layer, if you will, of how to go about attracting somebody. So someone who has Venus in Aries is quite competitive and feisty and quite forthright. So, she would go about, attracting somebody through sheer force of personality. Somebody with Venus and Leo, for example, might be more sort of, like she wears um, fashionable clothes and earrings and makeup and perfume, and she's like a bit of a showstopper, so like she likes attracting men like that. Someone with Venus and Virgo might prefer to meet somebody at work and show what a good work ethic she has, and be super organized, and help somebody somewhere. Someone else with Venus and Aquarius might likely meet her partner through groups of friends, or perhaps through associations and clubs and things like that. So if you're struggling for ways to know how you could meet somebody, sometimes you just need to tap into your Venus sign a bit more, and that will give you some clues on how to go about attracting him like bees to honey.
Interesting. And would you also look what house the Venus is in as well?
Yes, yes, you can. That can give you actually some indications on what he does actually. So even though your
Hmm.
Venus is there, it might suggest, what sort of like areas he does. But it definitely gives you talents in those areas. And when I was speaking before about people's jobs and occupations, um, a lot of people, think about like, the sun, or even the sixth house of work and health, or the 10th house of career. But Venus is what you love, and what you who you love, hanging out with. So that can actually like describe a little bit about the type of job that you might really enjoy doing, and the house will indicate that the areas that will But you so and I'm actually a big believer in people meeting people through work and work functions. Because interestingly, as I was talking about the moon taking a long time to uncover somebody, you actually get exposed to somebody's real self at work because you see them over a long period of time. You know, when they're dealing with the boss and maybe they've got a promotion or they're struggling to, make deadline on a project, and you get a very good insight into somebody because it's the sheer quantity of time, and that just can't be disguised. Over months and months, you really do know what someone is like. I know a few friends of mine who met their partners at work.
And it's, of course, yeah, if you do love your work, then it is you're in your element as well, so that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, look, there's a lot of different ways that you can meet men, but I think being happy and fulfilled, in your own skin is like the biggest turn on of all, actually, for men. Because
Absolutely.
they feel like they can, you know, add something to it. And it also has to apply to the women as well, that, you feel like you're the best version of yourself with them, and same for them with you. But, Andrew and I have both said to each other that, our lives are so much better now that each other is in it. So, it just, you know, we could sail along by ourselves, but we don't want to, like love being with each other, and every day is like a new adventure together. It's great fun.
Definitely. Now we won't have time for too many questions, but Emma's asking how would she find out where her planets are, like where her Venus is? I guess it's she would find out by having a consultation with you, for example. Like,
Yes, she do that with a consultation I do to my over the phone and in person in Melbourne, through my website. But um, I guess it depends how much Emma knows about her chart, because there are a number of websites that will actually give you a free chart wheel, and that will actually, um, you know, tell you where your Venus is. But I guess it depends on whether she actually knows what that means once she's found that out. So it's one thing to actually, be told you have, Venus in Capricorn, for example, but you might not know what that actually means. So,
exactly, like what does that really represent? And that's really where I guess having your chart done is really the way to go. Like when I had mine done many years ago, it was such a big aha moment. It was nearly like I felt like the astrologer knew me better than anyone in the past. It's quite an amazing experience.
yeah, it is interesting because, of course, I see, clients all the time, and I've never met them ever, and I can tell them something, and they look at me, and they kind of like have their mouths open a little bit, and I sort of said, "Have I said the wrong thing?" She said, "No, just no one has ever mentioned that, and that's so true." And that's a side of me I don't talk about at all, or whatever. And I was all really clear. So and that's actually another thing is your Saturn position can actually be like a little bit of a clue sometimes, where you may be tripping yourself up romantically, depending on what aspects that's making, because Saturn is all about fear and
Okay.
insecurity. And so if you actually know where your Saturn is, that can actually, and also what aspects that's currently making to your chart. If that's going over your sun sign, for example, there's a number of Scorpios born in late October who actually have Saturn going over their sun sign, which is probably making them feel a little bit low and depressed, and probably definitely not feeling like sexy and like partying at all, but more like curling up at home, and being very quiet and low profile, and it also makes them feel a little bit older. But if that's one side of looking at it, but if you know the other side, it's that it's time for you to settle down and start making commitments. You can see the positive. So there's always two ways to look at it in astrology. So if you know what the aspects are that are currently affecting your chart, and then also when the things coming up that are going to impact you, then you can make plans. So like I did in November, booking the flight for my mother and I on the 24th of April, the following year, because I knew that would be a good date. And it wasn't actually only, oh, and by the way, the date that you do things, such as, a party or, a wedding, particularly a wedding, um, it's not just the actual personality of the day itself, but it also is like the birthday or the birth personality of that particular uh, event. So you're looking at that as well.
It,
And everyone wants their relationship off to the best start that they can get. But yeah, look, older women, definitely don't need to worry about meeting somebody. It's just a case of using the right dates and having maybe a little bit more um, insight and awareness into their chart, into things that they might not have known before.
and for the single ladies who would like to explore their charts and maybe have come and see you for a one-on-one consultation, would you
Yeah.
also, yeah, what other things would you explore? Would you also sort of explore when would be a good time to maybe go out more and pretend? I guess you did it yourself, so is that something that you could help
Yeah.
women
Oh,
with?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. They just need to tell me what they want to ask, ask about, and then we'll have a look at their chart and what's happening, and then we'll like, look at great dates to, start dating. And if they want to like tell me the past birth dates of their most recent or even their most important relationships they've had, I can often see a pattern that they might not have been aware that they're actually following, that they might need to move on from, perhaps. And once they've broken that particular pattern, it frees them up to meet somebody nicely. You know, Andrew is by far the nicest guy I've ever dated. I've had some horrible ones. So,
Oh,
and
I
I
can
did,
relate to that. And I guess
yeah,
sometimes it's really important to make that conscious decision of, okay, I need, this is not working, I need to, something needs to change in order to get a different result. So something, there needs to be some sort of shift.
definitely, definitely. Actually, interestingly, I was looking the other day at the um, uh, bookings of people I was getting, and I was interested that it's only like a very small proportion of people in their 20s. It is actually largely people who are in their mid 30s to 50s actually. So it's in that sort of transition time where you're sort of thinking, okay, I'm starting to get ahead with my career, but what about me personally? And I think we both have friends and have experienced times when you're just going ahead with your career, but you let your love life fall to the wayside, or you think there's no chance for you. But it definitely is. You just need to know when to harness it.
Exactly. It's never too late, and it's so, life is important, and so important that we do make the most of it and we do get our needs met. So, and astrology is such a powerful tool to connect to more of who we really are. Now,
Yes.
I've put on the website on the slide here, but if someone would like to see to make a booking to actually see you in person, how would they get in touch with you?
Oh, well, they just go to the website and they click on global astrologers. I represent a number of astrologers around the world, but for people who are in Melbourne, they can click on the Melbourne astrology consultation, and they just fill out their birth details and their three preferred dates and times they'd like to have a consultation with me. And I'm also in Sydney for the June long weekend. So if you have any listeners in Sydney, I'm also doing consultations there that weekend. Um, so they can do that. And if they're
Fantastic.
outside Melbourne or that weekend for Sydney, they can book me at any time to do phone consultations, either getting them recorded on MP3 or CD to listen back to later after the consultation.
Brilliant. And then, as it mentions on the screen, you have been very generous to offer the $15 off. So all you'd need to do is simply enter 15 off at
Yeah,
the checkout.
yeah,
So
that's right. Yes.
well, thank you so much. I've actually kept time for a change, which is good. So it's 9 o'clock. So thank you so much for sharing your story. It's such an inspiring story because it's so good to hear that even after 7 years, you could have easily just gone, "Oh, it's all too hard, and I'm giving up." But and now you're getting married later on this year,
Yeah.
and it's all
Yeah.
happened really
Yeah.
quickly.
Yep, yep, yep. Oh, yeah. We met 2 years ago, and so 2.5 years after meeting, we're getting married. So, yep. So it was very, very exciting. Very, very
Very
exciting
exciting, and
time. And I also,
really, really,
sorry, I was,
thank you again for sharing your pearls of wisdom. And again, I would highly, highly recommend anyone who doesn't know their charts. It's such a insightful experience, and highly recommend they make a time with you. So more so than I guess it's much more personal for someone to actually have a consultation rather than getting an email report, because it goes a lot deeper. So, would you agree with that?
oh, yes, of course. Yes, they can ask anything they want, when we have a personal consultation together. And I also provide them after hours on weekends too, by arrangement with them. So obviously, people are working, so I'm quite flexible with timing.
Brilliant. Well, again, thank you so much, and look forward to learning more myself. There's always so much more to learn. So thanks again for being on the call, and have a fantastic evening.
Thanks, Camille. It was a pleasure. Thank you. Bye bye.